Welcome to Believe, Ted Lasso's top marketing, sales, and leadership lessons. I am joined today by Justin Tucker, Executive Vice President, Director of Strategic Initiatives for WFG. And I'm also joined by Tim Hooper, Vice President of Mid-Atlantic Region, WFG Agency. And I'm Sam Trimble, your agency MTD. Thanks so much for hanging out today. I'm excited to just dive in. This show to me has been one of those that it made me laugh, it made me cry. The emotional intelligence is off the charts. And I think because of that, there are a plethora of leadership, sales, and marketing lessons contained therein. And I want to kick it off with leadership. And JT, let's have you kick it off with being nice matters.
Yeah, leadership is a category I'm excited to talk about. And I think, you reflected on the show, Sam. I think it came at a time where a lot of people were looking for something that gave them an element of positivity and it showed them about reconnecting in relationships in a time where that felt so difficult or people might have felt so down. And so I think leadership is the right bucket to start in. I also want to make a couple of distinctions as we talk about leadership. There's a very big difference between leadership and management. You lead people, you manage process. And you also don't need to have the ownership title, the sales manager title, the escrow manager title to be a leader. And I think you see that manifest itself throughout this entire show, where at various times on this team, you have people who are engaging in being that leader or being that voice or picking someone up when they're down or helping motivate someone when they need it. And that brings us to the being nice matters, this central theme to this show, which is Ted Lasso with no experience coaching soccer and no experience living, in another country. He comes in and he starts to win people over in the simple concept of that if you're nice to people, you engage and you care, you can make an impact. And it was really funny as we were brainstorming and talking about this show. It was like that kismet moment or reticular activation where I saw an article come through from Inc.com that was referencing Mark Cuban, Jeff Bezos, and science. So I think three pretty good people to have back you up, saying that the world has changed, that it's not about being that hard charger, high D, in your face, Bobby Knight style of coach or leader or boss or mentor. It's about being that person who has that emotional intelligence and embraces empathy and works hard to understand. And you see that all through this show is Ted meeting people where they're at, being nice, using the power of positivity and being nice to overcome. And so as the Roy Kent contrarian, I think that's a lesson I try to learn more and more every day, but one that really stuck out to me in this show.
I think something you just mentioned right now raises a great point. I've done some presentations lately where I aggregated keywords from reviews for WFG directs, right, and shared them with our audience. And so 2019 pre-pandemic, the keywords were very transactional, right? It was about timelines and processes and the transaction. Move into post-COVID world, or not post-COVID, but the actual COVID world, 2020, 21 into 2022, the keywords in our top reviews have changed. It's about experience. It's about understanding. It's about empathy. It's about meeting people where they are. And so I think from a title agent perspective, it's really gone from like timeline, transaction, process to like, you made me feel important. You made me feel special. I'm not a GF number, a file number, or an address. I'm a person. And
yeah, so I had an old mentor of mine say that people buy good feelings and solutions.
100%.
And people want to feel good and they want to feel noticed and they want to feel seen and they want to feel heard and they want you to help you help them solve their problems. And if you can do those two things, I think you can be really, really successful.
Yeah. One of the comments you made a couple weeks back, Justin, was you had picked up the book, The Feelings Economy, and I downloaded it on Audible and started reading it. And just from a macro perspective of zooming out to the 1800s and 1900s and just kind of plotting the different economies, guys, it's a great read, but feelings, we have to look at the feelings of our people, and especially after a pandemic. There it is, especially after a pandemic. There's going to be some trauma. This is the global pandemic, first time in any of our lifetimes, first time in a century. There's going to be some trauma coming out of this, right? And it'll be at different varying levels, but some people have lost somebody they never thought would have succumbed to COVID, and some seniors have missed high school graduations. There's going to be different levels of varying trauma out of this. We have to, as leaders, be intelligent about that and manage and lead with feeling.
Well, I think, we start with the overarching theme, which I think is of the show, is be nice, be compassionate, be empathetic. Tim, what was your big takeaway or leadership lesson from the show?
Winning isn't the only thing. And we've heard the Vince Lombardi quote, winning isn't the only thing, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing, right? And I think that there's a time and a place for that quote. When you're on the field, you are going to do everything in your power to win. I love the Stephen Covey quote that says, be efficient with time, not with people. And as leaders, I mean, there's our work day, there's things we do that it takes 30 minutes to do, or it takes an hour, or we have to turn a response around within, no more than an hour or within 24 hours. There's certain processes that are very time driven and time bound. And yes, be efficient with time, but not with people. Unfortunately, as leaders, sometimes we get off the field where the time clock's running and we're still trying to be efficient with the emotions of our people and with the team. And so my big takeaway was how Ted literally would zoom in to different people's problems and personalities in different ways. And he would go in and determine in his mind that it wasn't winning on it. You do everything you can in that hour, 2 hours, whatever the game clock says, you do everything you can to win as a team, right? You make the best calls you can, but you're not sitting there distraught or beating your team up afterwards when you didn't win, because in your mind as a leader, it's more about building the relationships. It's more about looking at I believe what's right in front of us is the people metrics, not the clock metrics, the people metrics. Are the relationships healthy? Obviously not. They were not healthy when Ted moved moved overseas. They weren't healthy. Was there accountability on the team? Oh, heck no. Everyone was doing their own thing, trying to be the superstar. Somebody's living the past, right? Roy Kent, and Jamie's living there. He has this all-star. So if winning is the only thing, then you let Jamie score every freaking kick he can. But we all saw where he benches Jamie and shocks the whole fan base. Why? Because Ted realized winning was not the only thing. Team cohesion, team culture, the relationships. I love the Hope Solo quote. The women's soccer team. She said, "It's not so much about winning as much as it is about the journey. As much as it is about the journey." She said, "But at the end of the day, I do like to stand on the podium and get the gold medal." Right. So
it was a funny reposition for me when we started talking about this, because winning does matter. You see they get relegated, and that moment is not great for the city. It's not great for the team. I mean, it does matter. But then there are so many other threads that also get pulled upon that matter. And the irony is, if you solve those other things, you build culture, you build relationships, you build connectivity, you practice the right things, you do those things, you actually give yourself a better chance to win. And so but by not only focusing on the concept of I have to win and you lost, and because you lost, you need to go out there and win. It's this whole other dynamic of, if we take care of these other parts of our world, we actually put ourselves in a better chance to win.
Right. One of the things that Ted did was he brought books to all the different players. He picked out individual personalized books for everybody that would speak to them. And you think about just the practicality of that. So if you've read the book Leading, Lagging Indicators, or Leading versus Lagging, winning the game on the field in that 2-hour window is a lagging indicator. The leading indicators are, am I investing in my employees? Am I investing in the culture? So just some practical solutions if you're listening in. I mean, what have you thought about? Maybe a book club, or how are your people? I've seen so many people in this industry, and JT, to quote you, you said it's time the Title industry realizes that we're more about just making money. And it's about bigger social impact. It's about bigger things we can do in our community. What about the health of your team? When's the last time we thought about maybe doing a health challenge? Just to, Pat Stone preaches it all the time. Your health, your family, and then work. And that's the culture that WFG has, is what about the health of our people? When's the last time you on the phone signed off with your employee and said, hey, go out and take a walk, go breathe, go get some air, take care of our people? If we make that a leading indicator, I think, like you said, JT, we have a better chance of winning on the field.
Yeah. Well, as we, Sam.
No, go ahead.
No, go for it. I was gonna ask your takeaway in leadership, but if you have something to add there, go for it.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna kind of kind of give my takeaway a little bit. And I think it's something that's really interesting, and I've had a little bit of experience with it in the past and in past roles, and hopefully in the future as well. And so, you know, meeting your people where they are, you manage and you lead everybody differently. It's not one size fits all, right? Like there's people on your team that, you know, there's a reason why we talk about the love languages in our romantic relationships and friendships. It works too. In business, it works as well. Right? These are the same 5 love languages that we all have. So some people may be motivated by income potential. Some people may be motivated by accolades and words of affirmation publicly. I remember working with my former team in Texas and New Mexico. You know, we would try and lift up people on their birthday and have cake in the break room of each of our offices when people, and it was amazing how something as simple as a $15 cake from Albertsons just in 10 minutes together, lifting up this person on their birthday meant something to that person, whereas other people would be like, oh, that's embarrassing, I don't even want to do that. So it's about getting to know your team on an individual basis. One of the best things I ever did that taught me a lot was when I first took on the challenge at my former company. There were several offices, and I spent the first several days going to each office and getting to know everybody just a little bit, sitting down in their space, whether it was in the bullpen or in an office, and getting to know a little bit about them. And then I would go sit in my car and jot down, because I have a horrible memory, I would jot down things about everybody I met to try and commit it to memory. By the time, you know, a few months had gone by, I literally loved so many of the people that I worked with, and you know what? They loved me too. And so when we had a conversation about something that was maybe difficult, it was a lot easier to have because we had a mutual respect for each other that was based on a human foundation. I met them where they were, and everybody's different. We'd see in Ted Lasso, you know, Jamie and his situation with his dad. Ted meets him there and can relate to it, right? He even is able to knock down walls with Rebecca, who started taking over this whole team just as a form of payback, right? And won her over. You see Roy Kent, right, who has this trouble realizing that he's in the latter parts of his career, but then he's able to introduce him to the idea of becoming a true leader and being able to help shape and mold the future generations. And so being able to meet people where they are is so important. And to me, it's something that you've been talking about for years, JT. This is the perfect time to do a little bit of experiential marketing, man. Like, get to know your people in a way where you can connect with them about the things that are important to them. Not the things that you think are important, but the things that are important to them. It's amazing how easy it is to get somebody to like you. This sounds weird, right? Like, I feel weird saying that. It's really easy. All you have to do is show interest and like them. We like people that like us, right? If somebody asks and inquires about me and actually cares and really listens when I answer the question instead of thinking of the next thing to say, I really like them because they like me.
Now you're going all Dale Carnegie, how to win friends.
It's very true, though. It's very true. But at the end of the day, the last part I would say about leading and managing is, and you could apply this to a bunch of different things we're going to talk about over the next few minutes, but I love the idea of be a goldfish. You know what? Like last week, JT and I haven't talked about this publicly, JT and I had an 1.5 hour long phone call about some serious things. And we both got excited. We're passionate people, right? Like we both got excited, and we probably even raised our voice a little bit, not in a bad way, but just getting like worked up, having this great conversation. And at the end of the conversation, we're both a goldfish. I'm honored, and every day is a pleasure to work alongside him. And I'm so blessed that he seems to somehow feel the same way. And so we're goldfish, and you move on from that. So one thing that I see becoming, there's a simple thing that can become very toxic, especially in a tightly knit work environment like the title industry, where we're all working very tightly to get a process from start to finish, and all of us are important. If somebody is not a goldfish and there's some type of conflict that arises between processing and underwriting or closers, and that, you know, there's all these kind of different layers, we have to be goldfish. We have to promote moving on, working together, and letting those things go. It's easier said than done sometimes, but the outcome is nothing but team building and awesome. So be a goldfish.
Well, and as we kind of tie a bow on the leadership side of this and move down to let Tim kind of go through the sales side of this, you know, with that managing people different part of that, Sam, I think that there's this really important distinction between Ted creates a vision for the team or the company. It's believe, it's this is who we're going to be as a company and what we're going to strive to accomplish. And vision and mission are very positive things. But when you get down to the level of the individual and how you're going to work to execute on that, it is very important that you understand that each person is different, is motivated different, has different things going on in their life. And I always make this really horrible analogy that seems really, appropriate with Tim on the call, but like Tim's a runner, Tim's like in great shape. Like if Tim and I go see a physical trainer and we hire that person, they're going to start us in two very different places of our fitness journey. But it doesn't mean that they don't still have the same principles, the same overarching goal, the same overarching vision for an endpoint. So I just always love to make that distinction. Yes, a company should have vision. Yes, a company should have a culture that they're working hard to promote, but also then understand that people are individuals, they are unique, they do need a personalized approach. And if you try to do a one-size-fits-all approach to that, it's not going to be as successful as if you do the alternative. So
absolutely.
With that, Tim, take us down the sales path.
Wow. Yeah, I love sales. I'm going to kick us right off with being real and authentic. I think we throw that word authentic around a lot. And I think if you're not careful, authenticity is like this, it's almost a byword anymore, and it can feel a little bit abstract. But I will tell you, authenticity, to actually grasp it and be authentic, is the number one sales ingredient to success, I believe, long-term success. And how I would take my takeaway from the show with authentic, I think all of us would agree Ted's authentic. I think all of us could be inspired and strive to be more like Ted. But then sometimes, again, there's that abstract. Is this just a show, or can you be this way? It's really funny because I had about 3 or 4 people text me throughout 2020, 2021. They're like, you got to watch Ted Lasso. When you send out these bomb videos, like I'm reminded, because I usually drop like an inspirational quote, and I'm always talking about you can believe what you want to believe. Like my reality is based on what I believe can happen. And so we can believe the best in people. We can believe, and I preach that stuff. So I was like, well, I'm not a big TV consumer. So I'm like, well, then my brother comes on board and he gets me in a test. So we're sitting there in a hotel room, doing our stuff. We're winding up the day. He's like, dude, you got to focus in here on Ted. Like, you got to watch this. So we're watching Ted, and one of the first episodes, Ted goes in, he's doing the biscuits for Rebecca, and he's just breaking down that door of contempt. I mean, she has contempt for the team. She has contempt for her ex. I mean, that whole thing, like you said, it's just revenge. And he just keeps busting down that door, Hey, boss. He just runs it. Hey, boss. And it is the goldfish. It's water off the duck's back whenever she comes up with something critical, whatever. But what really got me was when she's walking with her assistant and he says, where did you get those? She says, from Ted. He's relentless and nice. And the authenticity in sales that's needed is, you say, why? Because every time, Mike Weinberg says it like this, every time you interact with a potential buyer, there's a defense that goes up. It's called buyer reflex. It just goes up. They're used to salespeople pounding on their door, acting nice, rolling out the red carpet, right? And being something different. And then once they finally get into business with them, they learn their true colors. So you have a buyer's reflex that happens. In sales, Mike says it's not our fault per se, but it is our problem. So we have to have the emotional intelligence to understand that just because they don't return your phone call, I tell people all the time, no response is a response. You have to go keep knocking on the door and saying, hey, boss, what's up? Hey, boss, brought you some biscuits. The consistency of authenticity, that's the key. Don't be authentic to win the deal, because then if you're trying to be authentic, you're probably not being you. Authenticity is all about just being you, showing up. When they say, can you do this? And you say, no. Do you know this? I don't know that yet, but I'm going to go find you an answer. Just being completely flat out honest with who you are. And then when you do that, guess what? The biggest intangible that I think a lot of us don't think about, you allow that person behind the desk to be their authentic self. When that happens, now you have magic, because people are dying to do business with people that allow them to be who they are.
Yeah, it's
like they don't
that,
have to put on airs.
That scene in the show that just sticks out to me is when Edwin Akufu, like that billionaire, is trying to recruit Sam to his team, and he is whining and dining him and renting out, restaurants and doing all these things to try to say, like, look, we're doing something special. You should want to be a part of it. He's trying to sell Sam on this vision. And then as soon as Sam says, maybe I'm not interested, or no, he flips out. Like he throws a tizzy fit. You see his true colors. You see the way he actually responds to those situations. I think the reality is over time in sales, no matter how hard you try to hide something, people are going to figure out who you are. We see through that stuff. It's not hard to see through it. So you might as well just lead with authenticity. I mean, be who you are, and you're going to connect with some people and it's going to be amazing. And some people might not be your cup of tea, and that's okay too. But that starting with authenticity, I think, is an awesome lesson.
And the last thing I would say there is, I think people, we all think we're better actors than we are, right? If we're not being authentic and we're not being ourselves, it's glaringly obvious to those around us. We may think that we're Oscar award-winning actors and actresses, but we're not, right? Like you can't hide forever. And frankly, it's pretty visible right away. So I love that idea. And you too, and especially you, Tim, like you are so good at that. And so anyone that's not connected with you on social should connect with you, just to be able to see exactly what that means in practice.
Oh, I think I've met Tim once or twice in person, and yet I feel like I know him, right?
Yeah.
That's an amazing strategy, or amazing way to show your authentic self.
Well, surround yourself with authentic people. And I'll shout out my buddy Ryan. In fact, Energy for Sales, we did a podcast called The Number One Thing in Sales, and Ryan came on and talked about authenticity. So check it out. Sam, take us into digging deeper, and then we'll wrap up with Justin on the sales topic.
Cool. So, I mean, sales is one of those things where the resistance that we typically get at the beginning never hardly has anything to do with what's actually underlying beneath the surface, right? And so it's important to do what Ted does, right? He's very humble, but he stays very curious. And I think in sales, one of the things is we'll either take no for an answer right off the bat and just kind of tuck our tail. And for somebody like me, I'm not a great salesperson. I feel like I'm a good relationship person, which is sales. So I have to tell myself, so many people are like, oh, I'm not good at sales. Are you good at relationships? Yeah, I love building relationships. You're amazing at sales then, right? Like Nikki Ormandy, who's probably on this call, amazing rep from New York that I get to work with all the time. She says that, Sam, sales isn't my thing. I'm like, Nikki, you're one of the best people I've ever come across at building relationships, building bridges, and creating connection with people. That makes you an incredible salesperson. So first, remember that. And then another thing that I think of that's really good, I picture him with his mustache and his collar and his sweater, and he'll ask inquisitive questions out of curiosity. And then he sits in the silence. Right. And he just keeps kind of staring until they respond. He doesn't get to Jamie's heart about his dad instantly. He doesn't get to Rebecca's heart instantly, but he's willing to sit in the silence, which so many of us, including myself, I am like the worst at that. I can have a meeting. I ask a question. If there's not something in like a second, I feel like I have to talk. Right. But when I take a step back and look at this, like I didn't plan on this. And this came from something else, actually. I have this tape in a lamp next to me, and it says silence is power in the world's worst handwriting. I have a doctor's handwriting minus the education and the income, but silence is power, right? Like being able to sit there and contain your thoughts for a second and let things lie is really important. And he's so good at doing that. It helps you find the real objection. Oftentimes you'll find somebody lead themselves to telling you the real objection if you just sit in silence for a couple seconds. And one thing that I thought was really interesting is, in order to be able to build an actual relationship, you have to find the actual why. If you use some surface objection to build this relationship on, it's probably built on sand because it wasn't even the real issue. So when you take the time to sit in the silence, you get comfortable with the silence, you find the real issue, and you have a real relationship. And at the end of the day, that's what we're striving for. This show is a perfect example of no one becomes close instantly, right?
Well,
It took time.
You said it so perfectly. Like the objection, we always hear overcome objection in sales, overcome objection. I think the more important skill is getting to the right objection, because so many times what people say is not what they're actually objecting to. And you see that with the relationship with Rebecca, and you see that with the relationship with Nate, and you see that with the relationship with Jamie, and you see that with the relationship with Roy Kent. Like every one of those relationships, what they were outwardly saying at the beginning wasn't actually their motivation or their objection to buying into this at a bigger level. And that ability to dig deeper, to not give up, to keep asking, to keep, inquiring, that's where you actually get to understand what motivates people and why are they making the decisions they're making. I think that's so well said.
Absolutely. JT?
Well, so my favorite scene in the show and sales lesson is the scene where they're in the pub. I actually feel like we should all be in an Irish or an English pub right now having a pint and some fish and chips. But it's when he's playing darts against the I can't recall his name from the show, but the previous owner, Rebecca's husband.
We don't even remember his name. We don't like
him. Yeah, he was an unforgettable character. But it's this scene where he just assumes that Ted knows nothing about playing darts, and he's gonna, wipe the floor with him, and he pulls out his fancy package of darts, and Ted's messing around. And he goes, "Well, you actually, if you would have paid attention, you'd have realized that I'm not left-handed." And he says this line as he's beating. It's Rupert. As he's beating Rupert, he says, "Be curious, not judgmental." I learned through my experience in life that there are a lot of judgmental people, and they never wanted to take the time to get to know me. And so it's this idea of being curious. And I think that manifests itself in two ways. I think it manifests itself in how we interact with our, I hate to use these words, but targets, prospects, like how we interact with them. Be curious, try to understand their business, their goals, the things that are important to them. But I also think it pertains to us in our curiosity to learn new skills, to become more valuable, to add talents that are going to make us be able to offer more to the people that we're trying to serve. And so this whole moment here for me of like, honestly, curiosity is a skill set, and it's an important one in sales. The more curious we can be about our own development, the more curious we can be about the people we're interacting with, the better off I think the better our results are going to be. So I just, not only is it an awesome scene to watch him win and then buy the bar a pint, but it's this really amazing moment of reflection of how often I walk into meetings with preconceived notions, with an agenda already in place, with the things that I want to talk about. And those meetings never go as well as the ones where I walk in with curiosity, no preconceived notions, and a notepad, and just start asking really good questions to seek understanding. So it was a powerful scene in the show to me, and a reminder of how often I walk into meetings and think I have the answers before I've even asked a single question.
What spot on. With you 1,000%, Justin. And I think with the internet and with technology at our fingertips, we can find answers on Google so fast that sometimes we feel, and it's good to feel empowered, like I have a resource, right? But to value the perspectives and experiences and thoughts of others enough to sit and ask them, and then to listen. But asking, somebody said one powerful question is worth more than 100 answers. And before you walk in, like, what's the question that no other sales rep is asking that real estate agent or that loan officer? What's the question that would actually take and open the relationship up or unlock new business opportunities? What's the question? If we thought about that first, and then I think that's where that skill of curiosity is actually developed, because it's a muscle. It's like putting puzzles together. Like, if you're puzzled about something, say something. Like, if you don't understand, if there's a missing piece in your mind, you might feel like an idiot. It doesn't matter. Ask them. Say, help me understand, and just be curious. Like, get the picture put together in your mind. And I love that you said it's a muscle. It's an exercise, because I think we can all build that.
What was the old real estate book, 7 Levels of Effective Communication? It was like the 3.5 most powerful questions. Like, what's your biggest problem? What have you tried?
Michael
What are you
Mayer.
going to do? By when?
Yeah.
Michael Mayer. Yeah, that's right. It was just this simple pattern of curiosity. Like, what's your biggest problem? What have you tried? What are you going to try next? And by when?
Yeah.
And what that unlocks in a conversation is crazy.
Yeah, and the byproduct is so awesome, right? The byproduct, not only do you hopefully get to the root of that, but the byproduct is you grow an actual long-term real relationship with that person.
Yeah.
And before we do move on to marketing, just because I think it's a funny part of our prep for this call, in the Be Authentic, conversation, we were laughing about the fact that everyone uses a Zoom background these days, because one of the ways that you can actually be authentic is to show where you're at and parts of your personality. And then after we said that, here are 3 of us with Zoom backgrounds. So I guess we need to take a little bit of our own advice.
That's hilarious. Very true.
With the show for sure. And real quick, I'm gonna say one other thing, because it just hit me when Sam said sit in silence, or silence is power. If you look at that, it spells, I wrote it on my cup rim, it spells sip. So just as a reminder, when you sip your coffee, just remember, take a sip. Silence is power. So I just had to point that out with it.
there's a really amazing article out there. I'll try and find it and send it as a follow-up, but it was called something like How 7 Seconds of Silence Earned Me $10,000 in Income. And it was this person who was on a job interview, and they were sitting at the job interview, and they said, well, you know what? We'd like to offer you the job, and we want to pay you $75,000, which was more than that person thought they were going to offer. So they were shocked in silence. And the silence made the person on the other end think, oh, they're not interested. We lowballed him. And like, you know what? We'll make it 85,000. And so it was this like how 7 seconds of silence earned me $10,000 in income. And
Wow.
it's so true. When you create that moment, how people interpret silence is pretty amazing.
It's so true. And the people that are able to get comfortable with it, it's a game changer. It really is. Like, I'm still striving for that, but I have meetings with people that get comfortable with it, and it's amazing what gets accomplished.
When I was traveling a lot more for work, I used to always have the market I was going to visit come pick me up from the airport. And when I got in the car, of course, I exchanged pleasantries and niceties. And after that, I would just sit there and not create any small chat. And by the time we got to our destination, I knew everything that was happening in that market. like, I'm just going to listen. I'm not going to say a word.
I love that strategy, and it's so true. Well, gentlemen, shall we wrap it up with marketing?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome. So who's up? JT?
Yeah, this one to me is, Sam, you mentioned experiential marketing. It's something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I think marketing and sales and leadership are blending more than they've ever blended before. And so to me, it's like, it's the little things. It's the little things that you do for people that make them feel seen, that make them feel heard, that make them actually know that you're taking notice of them. And it can be from Ted, and his army men that he hands out to people, to the cookies. So we mentioned the biscuits, the cookies that he takes to Rebecca every day, to noticing the things that are going on in Roy Kent's life. Like, this is experiential marketing at its finest. And Ted is a master at it. He's a master at finding that little thing that is meaningful or impactful on a bigger level. And I'll tell you guys, when you do these things, my own personal opinion, when you do these things, people remember the most extreme interaction they've had with you, or the most recent. And with that, it's these little tiny things that can create that extreme experience. As I mentioned early on this call, I've only met Tim in person, I think, one time. We were doing presentations in New York before we could travel. And I had a part in my presentation where I say, hey, I had this really great coach of mine who, says, find your single-threaded, mantra or statement that you say to yourself in moments of self-doubt. And the one that I came up with is, I'm capable. And so I, was sharing that story. And lo and behold, like a couple of weeks later, a month later, I get a thank you card from Tim with a laminated book cover design that said, you should write this book one day. And it said, like, I'm capable. And it had actually a person in a cape, like, I'm capable. And it's like, I've never forgot that moment. That moment's probably 3 years ago, right? So these little things that unlock emotion and create connectivity, they're more impactful than these big grandiose gestures. It's like, I don't need you to buy tickets to take me to a Blazer game or a football game. I want you to recognize those things to me that are important, and then show me that you saw those. And Tim did that in that moment. So I think Ted does a phenomenal job of finding out these little things in people that make them human and real and feel noticed. When you're trying to market and you're trying to solicit emotion from people, there's no better strategy in my mind than this.
Yeah, you're a master at that too. So that was your experience with Tim. I had a similar experience with you, right? Where I came out to Portland, we spent some time together. I talked about in 7th grade, my parents had saved up money to take me to New York City with my sister. I was fascinated with skyscrapers in New York City, and I still am to this day. My New York peeps hollow. And what did you do? I got home, and there's a book that I can see. It would be weird if I got up right now, but it's right here on skyscrapers. I got home, and about a week later, that book, along with a note and a couple other things, was on my doorstep. And it was because you heard what I was saying, right? And so it's not just about building relationships with customers. It's about sustaining relationships with your team. In a jobs market that we're in right now, there's people contacting everyone on your team on a regular basis. Yeah. So at the end of the day,
it's how he builds these relationships so quickly. I know these are funny ones, but it's like the day he spent with Trent Grimm and letting them see how he runs his team. And that last moment of that, where he's in his cab driver's dad's restaurant and they're serving him the craziest spicy food on the planet, and he's like not doing well, but he's like, no, this is an important moment. It's a little thing that I'm going to do. And he sits there and he eats all the dishes and he eats more, and he's like, this is so great. And now he has that person as a fan for life because of the way that he made them feel. And I think that's the important positioning of this is about how you noticing the little things it's about how you make other people feel.
Yeah. It's not always about the marketing dollars that we can spend. And sometimes we think we gotta go do the big sponsorship or sponsor the whole on the golf tournament. Those things are impactful, and there's a time and a place for those. But let me flip the script for just a second real quick and shout out to my agent, and I won't call you by name, who sent me, so my nickname is Hoop, right? So she went on and sent me this hot chocolate mug, right? It's a basketball, but she also knows I have 4 kids. And so she got the one with the little hoops, and then the little marshmallows. Like just the other night, they're like pitching marshmallows. I took a video and sent it back to her of all the kids pitching marshmallows into the hot chocolate. And the excitement of, oh, I got one. Oh, I got, just for me, she sends us hundreds of thousands of dollars in business. For me, I'll always remember this right here more than the hundreds of thousands of dollars of business. So just think about the impact, because she says, I recognized you, I took time. The other thing was she went and found this. Yeah. You know why your competition won't do this? Because it takes time, Time. And it says, I care, and I think I took time out to do something special for you.
The loyalty and the amount of relationship capital you get by doing these things, especially because it is authentic. It isn't for an outcome that you're seeking. It's because you care about a person, or you want to build a relationship in which you show that you care. But the relationship capital you get out of those moments, it's huge.
Yeah,
absolutely. Tim, you want to take us on our next stop?
Man, next stop is Germany. That's where I grew up, around soccer all the time. And for me, just the whole show, what I loved about it was obviously soccer. And it took me home. It took me back to my roots. And but what I think soccer did for me and does for me in sales and specifically marketing, what we're talking about here, is the community that's built around soccer. Communities of over there, it was every little German village had their soccer team, and you had your soccer jersey, and you were proud to be a fan. You didn't have to be the best. You didn't have to. You never really had to win a game. Those were your kids out there kicking the ball around. Your high schooler that you're hoping gets a shot at the big leagues. It could be raining, muddy, slippery. You're still there in the stands. It could be a just terrible season. You're still there in the stands. And who really enjoys? I mean, soccer can get kind of a little boring, right? It's like hockey. It's like it can get boring. It's not so much about
guys. You guys
careful who you say that one to.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm a soccer fan, and I there were times that I was just bored. But what happens when you're bored? You build relationships in the stands, and you get to know the players. And soccer just has this way of building a community. The other thing was the soccer team did a lot in the community. So I just think the application of marketing and what I saw from the show especially was people wanted to be part of something. And even as they did something different, for the record, I love hockey and soccer, Sam. So nobody hold that against JT or Sam. That's all on me, okay? The boring piece is all on me. But what I took away from it is people want to be part of something, even if they're calling you the winker, right? And later on in the show, it became an endearing term to Ted, like they call him the winker. But earlier in the show, it was like this derogatory, like you suck, right? But they still got on in the pub, right? And they're all like crowded in there watching the game and shouting at Ted, but they're all part of something. It's this super fandom. JT, you call it a super fandom. So I think that where I would bring this into our practical title agencies in our daily lives and our marketing is, what story are you telling? So many times we're so focused on telling our story or how great we are, or the anniversary, the happy birthday of our team, which is fine. But like Sam mentioned earlier, some team members don't really care that their pictures up on social media saying happy birthday to them. What I want, or what I encourage as a consumer, what I would want to buy into is a title company who's doing things that I care about in my community. A title company who's inviting me in to be part of something that's greater than just Hey, we celebrated all these closings last month. You know, some loan officers that I coach and real estate agents, it's all about that. I crushed it this way. Here's my numbers. And they post those out. I'm like, I get it. There's a time and a place for a gala or an awards banquet, but every month, like, tell the client story. What are you part of? What does your client want to be a part of? I think you have to ask yourself the question, am I doing it like soccer? Am I doing my marketing like soccer? Am I posting their story and inviting, do they connect emotionally with it and want to be part of this community?
Yeah, I love that thought process. Like, to me, it's what is fan short for? Fanatic, you know, fandom. It's like people become so crazy about this team because they feel like they're a part of it. And it's, how do you make your employees feel like they're a part of it? How do you make your clients feel like they're a part of it? Because the truth of the matter is, once we become fanatical about something, we will refer it to everyone. We will wear the colors proudly. We will be so excited to tell people about it because it becomes part of our identity. And it's all these things. And then it's also to flip that from a company perspective to an individual perspective. I do think it's this subtle reminder that you can't just consume culture, you need to contribute to it. And so it's not just Ted and the team, it's the bar that they all go to, it's the community, it's the people that are walking down the street, it's the players, it's every person has something to give back to that culture. The culture is not 100% dictated by the team, it's dictated by the community. And I think that's an important lesson for us to remember. A brand is not what we think it is. You know, a brand is what other people think it is. It's what their experience has been with it. So I think there's so many parallels in sports that do an amazing job of creating these moments that people become fanatical about a team. And if we can get them to become fanatical about our brand, about working at our company, about working with our company, I mean, that's the magic of super fandom. And that's when you start having people who will relentlessly use you and will refer you to everyone that they can because they feel like they're a part of your journey.
Absolutely. In my former life as a title agent, I knew we had started to get to that point with certain people when they were asking for polo shirts with our logo on it. Right? I was like, what do you want my logo? You know, and they were asking for it. And one thing, like in a practical sense that I would say, and I've nerded out about this before we touch on our last point, is I loved the idea, and this is something that we tried to implement. You know, it's an honor and a privilege to be invited to be on boards, right? So, you know, I've been on a few boards with the city and the state and, you know, industry stuff, and it's awesome. And so what does it do when you're on a board? You take some semblance of ownership over that organization or the company or the cause or whatever it might be. You become emotionally invested in it. And so one of the things that I worked on doing was building out some advisory boards at my former title company. It allowed me to bring them in. You know, it was maybe just a breakfast where I'd have a speaker for a couple minutes, and then we give them kind of a state of the company update, and then go around the room and take suggestions. Right. So I loved the idea of having a lender board, a realtor board, and an attorney board. And it was an advisory panel or advisory board. We would meet quarterly, and that it was amazing what it did. It rotated every year. So it was only a 1-year term. So you could go through and include a lot of different people. And it made people feel like they had some ownership over what was happening here. They were working towards growing it. Were they actual partners in the company? No. But did they have in their mind ownership that made them want to promote it? Did it make them fanatical? Did it make them complete loyalists? Absolutely it did. And it took breakfast.
And then think of that psychology for a minute, where you're asking someone else to come give you guidance and advice, which we all by nature love to do that. I mean, jump on social media for one day and you'll get all the advice you need. Like, people love to give guidance and advice in their perspective. And then the psychology behind it is, when you take that advice and you listen and you implement something, and you can come back to them and say, because of the feedback that you gave us, look what we were able to do. That person will be a client for life. That person will refer you to every single individual they can. Because now it's not, a company I send my title orders to. It's a company that I'm invested in and a part of, that listens, that cares. And also part of my brain is now in it. Like, part of something that I gave them is now a part of it. So there's a lot of psychology wrapped up in that.
Yeah, and you actually learn things that help improve, streamline your business. Yeah. Right? Like, I actually learned things that I was like, wow, this is really impactful. So that was just kind of a side tangent on me. The last stop under marketing is identity creates memorability. And so I love this piece. I love the idea. You think of Ted Lasso, you picture everything about him. You picture the collar, you picture the sweater, you picture the mustache, the one-liners and the little quips, the visor. I mean, you touched on a lot of this in our pre-meeting stuff, JT. And so he has an absolute identity that is very memorable, right? Tim has a big family. Tim has, a great faith, and that is his identity. JT has this awesome dog and loves pizza. That is his identity. And so whether you're a company or an individual thinking about your personal brand, we throw the word around all the time: branding, personal brand, company brand. What's your brand?
You forgot dad jokes, by the way.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The king of all dad jokes. If you do not follow or not connected with Justin Tucker on Facebook, connect with him. If nothing else, like every day at like 5 a.m., which by the way, get some sleep, dude. At like 5 a.m., there's a dad joke. And the funny thing is every dad joke is one of those that like probably 50% of the time, not everyone, but probably 50% of the time, I have to read it twice because I'm like, huh. So and for my identity, part of it, I just started doing this recently, and it was almost kind of, it's one, people that know me know I love my dog, Hamilton. But two, I kind of was thinking about this. I was nerding out about this, and I was wondering, I think my dog's awesome. And if I posted a picture of him every day, the daily ham, just on my story, not a post to crowd everybody's feet, like how long would it take before it caught on? It was less than a week when I skipped a day and I had 3 or 4 DMs from people saying, hey, where's Ham? Right? So my personal brand has become, I'm awkwardly excited about different things because I'm a total nerd, obviously. My thought process in business and in life that I try to use as a guidepost for everything that I do is a rising tide raises all ships. Like, people repeat it constantly, and I learned that from a guy named Walter Kozlowski that taught me how to examine title in El Paso, Texas. A rising tide raises all ships. My dog, the Daily Ham. And again, I'm excited and a nerd. That is my personal brand. That is what I am known for. When people can recognize something about you that stands out, something about your company that stands out, your brand, your tendencies, it's memorable and they can connect with that. And it's amazing how quickly people come to expect it.
Well, can I tell you what this, Sam, I agree with this. And I do identify with, I love pizza, and I'm on the quest to find the best slice in the country. And you've seen pictures of my dog, and I tell dad jokes, and I'm an Oregon State Beaver football fan, even though we can barely win a game, although we won a couple this year, so we'll take it. What I always hear from people is the desire to hide their identity. Literally, they'll say, can I have 2 Facebook pages, like one for work and one for my personal life? And they'll say things like, I just want to keep those things separate. And I don't know that we're in a world, like, you don't have to share your most innermost, deepest, darkest secrets, but you want to be memorable and you want someone to connect with you. And I always layer this back to, I do a lot of recruiting. I'll layer this back to recruiting. Here are the 2 options you have for recruiting. Well, I guess there's some other ones, but here are 2 that present themselves to me. Pick up the phone and cold call someone, and everyone is going to be in that pushback mode. You got me at the wrong time. Why are you calling me? I don't know what's going on. Or you connect to them on social. You engage with some of the things that are important to them. They see some things about you as well. Like, oh my gosh, that big guy over there has a little fluffy dog and he likes pizza. And then when you have that moment where you actually do reach out and interact, it is human. It is personal. You are actually on the other end of the phone. You're a real person that has ways in which someone can connect. And yet we do all these things to hide our identity and say, you know what, I just need to make sure that I keep that separation. Yeah. Nope, like, this is who I am, right? And I don't know why we try to hide it so much.
It's interesting. I think there's the fear of offending somebody if we show who we are. And I think in that fear, we end up blending in and being bland because there's nothing we want to have a position on. Right? You don't have to be offensive in having a position or being a fan of the Oregon Beavers. You don't have to be offensive. You don't have to be an offensive fan, but you could be a fan of something and be loud about that and not offensive. And so, like, cut through that fear. And I'll tell you, it was interesting. So my sales podcast, my sales coach and I, we were coming up with our like opening line, and we had all these things and they sounded way too formal and all this. And I'm like, you know what? This show exists so people can know they can have fun in sales. And so we came up with, if you're not having fun in sales, you might be doing it wrong. So that's our tagline. And when we first came out with it kind of gave me like that gut, butterflies in my gut, like, ooh, that's a little too corny, or that's a little too, but do you know that I got up and do a huge presentation for a bunch of loan officers at Truist, and the senior vice president, he opened it up in his deep, gruff voice. He's like, Tim Hooper's here because, guys, if we're not having fun in sales, we are doing it wrong. And when he said that moment of truth, I was like, he picked up on that. He remembered that. The thing that scared me, he remembered.
Tim, that's so awesome to me. I mean, I always have a phrase in the back of my head, which is, why do we market and sell to people in ways we don't like to be marketed and sold to?
Wow.
And so we think about the things that interest us, that catch our attention, especially in a world where we are getting more messages per second and sorting through more clutter and white noise than any time in history. That if you aren't going to take a stand on something, to have a voice in something, and to have an identity, you are going to be white noise, and you don't connect to people who do that either. I mean, I think there's a saying out there: if you try to appeal to everyone, you'll end up appealing to no one. And I just think that we're over cautious, and maybe that's the social validation aspect of this. So we're afraid if we put ourselves out there, someone won't receive it or accept it. But I promise you, I mean, the things that make you who you are, that's it layers through everything. That's the authenticity, that's the experiential marketing, that's the fandom, that's the, that's the part that I think I really hope people get out of this is Ted did not come over and try to be someone else. He didn't even hide the fact that he didn't understand how to coach soccer. He's like, I don't know, Nate, you tell me what play we should run. Like, I don't know. I'm really passionate about people being comfortable with their unique self and being comfortable creating that identity. So Sam, I think it's an awesome takeaway.
I think at the end of the day, Maya Angelou said it best when she said, we are more alike than we are different, right? So whatever it is that you relate to, that you're excited about, that you allow people to see your true self on social media, there's a good chance that people are going to relate to that. And when it hits home, it does nothing but build great relationships and great opportunities in business because of that. So I'm going to wrap us. Go ahead. Sorry.
One last quick point on that. And with social, I mean, I know we're going down the social rabbit hole now, but with social media, I also often hear people say, oh, I don't have time for that. And the little reminder I like to try to give there is, look, you don't need to make time for it. It's life casting. You are just sharing the stuff that's already happening. Right. You don't need to do anything more than live and make sure you give people a small window into it.
Absolutely. And I'm thankful for the small window into both of your minds this morning. And thank you, everybody that joined us. We have a huge group. You guys all stayed on for an hour. We are so thankful for you. A rising tide absolutely raises all ships. And if we follow Ted Lasso's lead in leadership, sales, and marketing, I truly believe that 2022 is going to be one of our best years yet. You can expect a recording to this and a follow-up. If anybody has any questions, we are always here to help. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you all very soon on the pitch.
Are we given the last overarching lesson, the big one?
Do it.
The big final thing? I think Tim and I and Sam, we talked about this a lot at the end of the call of how you pull all of this together. And it's the moment of realization that the sum of the parts is greater than any individual. And in this world, we need title, we need escrow, we need customer service, we need sales, we need marketing, we need underwriting, and it's everyone plays a role in that to make a team successful, from Rebecca to Ted Lasso to the people on the team. And so I just think we would be remiss if we didn't say thank you to all of our agents on this call for what you do to contribute to our team, what you do to contribute to making us successful. We would not be able to be the company that we are and grow at the rate we are without your support. So thank you for being a part of our team and making the sum of our parts greater than any one thing as an individual we could do. So thank you guys.
Believe in yourself. Go believe in yourself and believe in others.
I couldn't have said it any better. It's an honor and a privilege for everybody here, and also to work alongside you two gentlemen. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks for including me, guys. This was fun.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.